What if I told you that your hands are not merely instruments of physical touch, but sacred portals through which the very essence of creation flows? Welcome, seekers of hidden wisdom. Today, we embark on a journey into one of the most profound yet overlooked mysteries of human existence, the mystical power that dwells within your hands, and more importantly, how to shield these sacred instruments from the invisible forces that seek to drain, corrupt, or manipulate their divine energy. For millennia, initiates of ancient mystery schools have guarded this knowledge with their very lives. They understood what modern society has forgotten, that our hands are not simply flesh and bone, but living conduits of cosmic force, capable of channeling healing, manifesting intention, and connecting us to the fundamental frequencies of existence itself. In the silence between thought and action, your hands hold the keys to transformation. The masters of old knew that unprotected hands become vulnerable doorways, allowing negative energies to penetrate not just our physical being, but our entire energetic matrix. They developed sophisticated techniques to create impenetrable shields around these sacred gateways, techniques that have been preserved in the deepest vaults of esoteric tradition. Tonight, the veil is lifted. What I'm about to share with you could fundamentally alter how you perceive your own divine instrument of creation. This is not mere superstition or folklore. This is the accumulated wisdom of countless generations of spiritual alchemists who understood the true nature of reality. The hand that knows its power can reshape the very fabric of destiny. To understand the protection of our hand's mystical energy, we must first journey back through the corridors of time, to civilizations that built their entire spiritual frameworks around the recognition of subtle energies and their manipulation. The Egyptian mysteries. In the shadow of the Great Pyramids, the priests of ancient Egypt developed what they called Neteru Jet, the divine hand teachings. Within the sacred halls of Karnak and Dendera, initiates spent decades learning to perceive and direct the vital force they called Ka through their palms and fingertips. The Egyptian papyrus known as the Scroll of Sacred Gestures, discovered in a sealed chamber beneath the Temple of Ptah, describes elaborate rituals for consecrating the hands before any magical working. The priests understood that unprotected hands could become contaminated by what they termed Isfet, the primordial chaos that constantly seeks to corrupt divine order. These ancient masters developed intricate hand purification ceremonies involving sacred oils blessed under specific stellar alignments, combined with precise mudras that created energetic barriers. They believed that the hands, being the most active in manipulating the physical world, were also the most susceptible to spiritual contamination. The Hermetic tradition. As above, so below, but what bridges heaven and earth? The human hand, trained in sacred gesture. The Hermetic schools of Alexandria preserved and expanded upon Egyptian wisdom, developing what Hermes Trismegistus himself referred to in the Emerald Tablets' hidden commentaries as the art of celestial manipulation through terrestrial instruments. The great Hermetic master Iamblichus wrote extensively about the vulnerability of untrained hands to psychic attack and energy vampirism. In his work, De Mysteriis, he describes how certain malevolent entities specifically target the energy centers located in human palms, using them as entry points to drain vital force from unsuspecting individuals. The Hermetic tradition developed the concept of sigillum manus, sacred seals that could be visualized or physically drawn upon the palms to create impenetrable barriers against negative influences. These weren't mere symbols, but living geometric forms that resonated with protective frequencies of the celestial spheres. The Kabbalistic understanding. Within the mystical traditions of Kabbalah, the hands hold extraordinary significance as manifestations of divine creative power. The Sefer Yetzirah, the ancient book of creation, describes how the 10 fingers correspond to the 10 Sephiroth of the Tree of Life, making each hand a living mandala of divine emanation. The great Kabbalist Isaac Luria taught that the hands contain what he called orot nitzutzot, divine sparks that can either elevate or be corrupted depending on their protection and use. He developed elaborate hand blessing rituals that created what he termed klipot barriers, mystical shells that prevented negative forces from accessing these divine sparks. The Zohar speaks of the Yad Elohim, the hand of God, manifested through human hands when properly consecrated and protected. Medieval Kabbalists understood that unprotected hands could become conduits for the Sitra Achra, the other side, allowing demonic influences to manipulate human actions and drain spiritual vitality. Biblical foundations. The sacred scriptures themselves encode this ancient wisdom. When Moses raised his hands during the battle with Amalek, it wasn't mere symbolic gesture. It was the practical application of hand energy direction that the text describes as determining victory or defeat. The very words laying on of hands throughout Scripture indicate a tradition of energy transmission that required specific preparation and protection protocols. The Book of Chronicles describes how the Levitical priests underwent elaborate hand consecration ceremonies before approaching the sacred vessels, understanding that unconsecrated hands could be destroyed by divine energy, or, conversely, could contaminate the holy through their own spiritual impurity. The Knights Templar and Medieval Mysteries. During the Crusades, the Knights Templar encountered these ancient teachings through their contact with Islamic mystics and Byzantine scholars. They developed their own synthesis, creating what they called Manus Sanctus rituals that combined Christian mysticism with rediscovered ancient techniques. The Templar manuscripts, hidden for centuries in the vaults beneath Rosslyn Chapel, describe how certain knights were trained as guardians of the sacred touch, individuals whose hands were so thoroughly protected and consecrated that they could handle sacred relics without fear of spiritual contamination or energy drain. The wise hand moves in harmony with celestial rhythm, protected by knowledge that transcends time. This knowledge was later preserved by various esoteric orders, including the Rosicrucians, who developed increasingly sophisticated understanding of what they termed psychic hygiene for the hands, recognizing them as the primary points of energetic exchange between human consciousness and the material world. To truly comprehend the need for protecting our hands, we must first understand the profound energetic architecture that makes them such powerful and vulnerable instruments of consciousness. The chakric system of the hands. Ancient Vedic wisdom teaches us that each hand contains what Sanskrit texts call hasta chakras, secondary energy centers that function as satellites to the heart chakra. These palm centers, known in Tamil tradition as Kai Kendra, serve as both receivers and transmitters of pranic energy. The right hand, governed by solar masculine energy, channels Pingala, the active, projective force that manifests intention into reality. The left hand, ruled by lunar feminine energy, draws in Ida, the receptive, intuitive force that connects us to subtle realms. When unprotected, these centers become like open wounds in our energetic body, vulnerable to psychic attacks, energy vampirism, and spiritual contamination. The unguarded hand bleeds invisible light until the wellspring of power runs dry. The 5 fingers themselves represent the 5 elements in their pure form: thumb for space, Akasha; index for air, Vayu; middle for fire, Agni; ring for water, Jal; and little finger for earth, Prithvi. Each finger contains multiple nadis, energy channels, that when compromised can affect our entire elemental balance, leading to physical illness, emotional instability, and spiritual stagnation. The Sephirotic hand in Kabbalistic practice. In Kabbalistic understanding, each hand manifests the tree of life in miniature. The palm represents Malkuth, the kingdom, where divine energy manifests in the physical realm. The 5 fingers embody the 5 lower Sephiroth through which divine creative force flows into material expression. When the Kabbalah speaks of Tselem Elohim, being made in God's image, it specifically references this divine creative capacity manifested through consecrated hands. But just as divine energy can flow through protected hands, so can Qliphothic demonic forces corrupt unshielded ones. The great Kabbalist Abraham Abulafia taught that the hands contain Orot Makifim, surrounding lights, that create natural protective barriers when properly activated through specific meditative practices and sacred gestures. Without this activation, he warned, the hands become Kelim Nishbarim, broken vessels, unable to contain divine light, and vulnerable to spiritual pollution. The alchemical understanding. In the crucible of the palm, base metal transforms to gold, but only when the vessel remains pure. Medieval alchemists understood the hands as living athanors, sacred furnaces where the great work of transformation occurs. The Arabic alchemist Jabir ibn Hayyan described how the hands of the true alchemist must be sealed with the protection of Mercury, not the metal, but the divine principle of communication between realms. The famous alchemical text, Mutus Liber, contains hidden diagrams showing how to create circulatum minus, protective energy circuits around the hands that prevent the dissipation of what Paracelsus called mumia, the vital essence that makes magical operations possible. Nicholas Flamel, in his secret notebooks, wrote extensively about manus philosophorum, the philosopher's hands, describing elaborate purification rituals involving the four alchemical elements, designed to make the hands worthy vessels for the prima materia of transformation. Sacred geometry and hand protection. The mystics of antiquity understood that certain geometric forms, when visualized or drawn upon the palms, create what modern physics might recognize as interference patterns that disrupt negative energetic frequencies. The pentagram inscribed upon the palm, with its perfect mathematical proportions reflecting the golden ratio, creates what Pythagorean texts call a harmonic shield, an energetic barrier that resonates with cosmic order and repels chaotic influences. The hexagram or seal of Solomon, when properly activated through breath and intention, generates what Jewish mystical texts describe as Magen David, the shield of David, a protective force that ancient sources claim can deflect even the most sophisticated forms of psychic attack. The Sanskrit science of mudras. Perhaps no tradition has developed the science of hand protection more thoroughly than the ancient Vedic system of mudras. These aren't mere hand positions, but precise geometries that alter the flow of prana through the nadis and create specific energetic effects. The Karana mudra, with its extended index and little fingers, is specifically designed to banish negative entities and create a protective field around the practitioner. Ancient texts describe how this mudra generates what they call Raksha Kavach, armor of protection, that makes the hands impenetrable to subtle attack. The Apana mudra, touching thumb to middle and ring fingers, creates what Sanskrit sources term Shuddhi Shakti, purifying power, that cleanses the hand chakras of accumulated negative energy and restores their natural protective barriers. The hand that knows its sacred geometry becomes a fortress that no darkness can penetrate. Throughout history, those who have mastered the protection of their hands' mystical energy have left us remarkable testimonies of transformation and power that serve as living proof of these ancient teachings. The Desert Fathers and Sacred Touch. Saint Anthony of Egypt, the great Desert Father, wrote in his hidden letters about what he called the purification of the instruments of prayer. He described how, through specific hand-blessing rituals learned from Coptic monks who preserved pre-Christian Egyptian mysteries, he could discern spiritual entities through touch alone and protect himself from what he termed the poisonous grasp of demons. The monk Evagrius Ponticus documented cases where unprotected hands during spiritual practices led to what he called acedia, a specific form of spiritual desolation caused by energetic contamination through the palms. His solution involved elaborate hand consecration ceremonies that combined Christian prayer with geometric visualizations derived from ancient Egyptian sources. The Islamic mystics and hand sanctification. The great Sufi master Ibn Arabi wrote extensively about Yad al-Qudra, the hand of divine power, describing how the properly consecrated hand becomes a bridge between the visible and invisible worlds. In his secret teachings to initiates, he revealed specific protective practices involving the 99 names of Allah, each name creating a layer of energetic protection around the hand chakras. Jalal ad-Din Rumi himself practiced what Persian mystical texts call Daste-Pak, pure hand rituals, involving sacred breathing techniques and visualization of divine light flowing through the palms. His students reported that the master's touch could instantly calm psychological disturbances and protect against what they termed the evil eye, transmitted through physical contact. The Renaissance Magi and practical results. The master's hand moves through reality like a key through its destined lock. Giovanni Pico della Mirandola documented remarkable results from what he called manus consecrata practices. In his secret correspondence with Marsilio Ficino, he described how proper hand protection allowed him to handle cursed objects without spiritual contamination and to perform healing work without absorbing the patient's negative energy. The physician and mystic Agrippa von Nettesheim reported that students who learned proper hand protection techniques showed measurably improved results in their alchemical experiments and were notably resistant to what he termed fascination, psychic attacks directed through envious or malevolent gaze. Modern practitioners. Even in our current era, practitioners who have mastered these ancient techniques continue to demonstrate their effectiveness. The renowned mystic and author Dion Fortune documented numerous cases where proper hand protection prevented what she called psychic infection during spiritual healing work. Contemporary energy workers trained in traditional methods report consistent experiences of improved spiritual clarity, enhanced intuitive abilities, and notable resistance to energetic drain when working with disturbed or negative individuals. Many describe sensing actual energetic barriers around their hands during times of potential spiritual attack. The protected hand knows no fear, for it carries the accumulated wisdom of ages. The Brazilian mystic and healer João Teixeira de Faria, known as John of God, employed traditional hand blessing techniques derived from Kardecist spiritism, which itself preserves ancient Egyptian and Hermetic wisdom. His documented healings often began with elaborate hand purification rituals that witnesses described as creating visible energetic effects around his palms. These testimonies, spanning cultures and centuries, point to a consistent reality. The human hand, when properly understood and protected according to ancient wisdom, becomes an instrument of extraordinary power and safety in navigating the subtle dimensions of existence. As we reach the culmination of this sacred journey, let us pause to integrate the profound wisdom we have uncovered together. We have traversed the corridors of ancient temples, walked alongside initiated masters, and glimpsed the hidden architecture of power that flows through our very fingertips. The knowledge you have received tonight is not mere information. It is a living transmission, passed down through an unbroken chain of guardians who understood that the human hand represents far more than a tool of physical manipulation. It is a sacred gateway, a divine instrument, a bridge between worlds that demands our deepest respect and most careful protection. From the pyramid temple complexes of ancient Egypt to the hidden chambers of medieval alchemists, from the Sanskrit sciences of the Vedic masters to the mystical insights of Kabbalistic sages, one truth emerges with crystalline clarity. Our hands are simultaneously our greatest spiritual asset and our most vulnerable point of energetic exchange. The techniques we have explored, the protective visualizations, the sacred geometries, the consecration rituals, these are not relics of a superstitious past, but practical technologies of consciousness that remain as relevant today as they were millennia ago. In our modern world, perhaps even more so, as we navigate increasingly complex energetic environments filled with electromagnetic pollution, psychological manipulation, and subtle forms of spiritual attack. Remember that this knowledge carries with it both tremendous power and profound responsibility. The masters who preserved these teachings understood that true protection comes not from fear, but from alignment with divine order, from becoming so thoroughly consecrated to the highest purposes that lower vibrations simply cannot find purchase within our energetic field. Your hands are waiting to be awakened to their full potential. They long to serve as conscious instruments of healing, creation, and transformation. But first, they must be protected, purified, and prepared through the time-tested wisdom we have shared tonight. The ancient mystery schools spoke of 3 stages of initiation: the awakening, the purification, and the illumination. Tonight represents your awakening to the sacred nature of your hands. The purification and illumination await your dedicated practice of these protective arts. In the space between one heartbeat and the next, transformation becomes possible for those whose hands have learned to channel divine light. Continue this journey. Explore deeper layers of this ancient wisdom. Your hands, these miraculous instruments of consciousness,